back to Stat 7 Sports. I'm the contained Kunes, and we're finally done with the draft. 3 days from the 23rd through 25th. We finally got some football content to talk about, and really any sports content whatsoever. But finally, we get to talk about the draft, and maybe a little day or two later than I was hoping. But starting off with the AFC, just how everyone did in the AFC. Starting off with the AFC East, and the first year of the draft where the Patriots aren't going to be the favorites, and the first year they're not going to have Tom Brady as our quarterback. So really overall on this one, like, Patriots didn't have a first round pick. They traded back for the 23rd overall pick, where the Chargers picked Kenneth Murray, and they were able to trade back and get more picks in the future. So it did kind of help them out for there, but with this draft, it's nothing really too standoutish, except for the fact that it's like you see they got two tight ends, and the last time they drafted two tight ends, that was Rob Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez before he went nuts. But you remember how crazy those bad wording, but you remember how dynamic and just how good that Patriots offense was with two tight ends. So it's like it makes sense for them to want to go back to that and start building off those tight ends again. But they kind of have to see what they're going to end up building on with Jarrett Stidham, and they really didn't get that much on a wide receiver help until the latter part of the draft. So that's one thing you kind of have to mark against them. But then you get seven picks with the Bills, starting with AJ Epineza, who I had as a first-round grade. Zach Moss, solid running back, probably the sixth running back on the board. And they surprisingly picked Jake Fromm to be the backup for Josh Allen, but as with Fromm being a fifth-round pick, most people saw him as a potential third, maybe even second. But that's actually the worst part of the East. Like, Miami, I honestly think had the best draft, and not just because they had the most picks, but they would have filled so many needs, and the Jets are actually an honorable mention. But getting Tua, not deciding to end up overthinking the whole injury, and yes, Tua is a risk, but it's one that could work out. Yes, Austin Jackson, the USC tackle, he's probably going to be the left tackle to replace Laramie Tunsil, but for the fact on him, he is going to be a bit of a project on it, but they were able to replace Tunsil with Jackson. They were able to get a starter, maybe not for this year, but for next year with Tua, since they'll probably start Fitzception. And they have Noah I out of Auburn. I'm not going to try to pronounce the name. I've tried it before. I made it sound bad, but he's going to be starting. He'll more likely be starting on the outside, on the other side of newly signed Byron Jones. And Robert Hunt and Raekwon Davis are very good values as second-round picks. Hunt was the top guard. Raekwon Davis was like the third or fourth defensive tackle. And also with the Jets themselves, Becton was one of those top four offensive tackles. So a lot of people, some of them had him going to the other New York team in the Giants, fourth overall. So be able to get him at 11th overall, despite him having a diluted sample at the combine, it really didn't affect his draft status too much, but he definitely has the highest ceiling off of any of the offensive tackles. Denzel Mims is one from Baylor that they definitely had some people deciding to take him in the late first round, maybe as the fifth or sixth best wide receivers after you got those first three and four of Ruggs, Lamb, Judy, and Jefferson. After that, like 6 through 10, 5 through 10, it could have really been anyone. Ashton Davis is a good steal from the third round. Jabari Zuniga, he had disruptive moments at Florida, and Savior Pirine to be a backup for Le'Veon Bell. It is a little interesting that they got James Morgan as he was the fifth. Oh, he was rated like the seventh best quarterback, but he was drafted before you got to Fromm, which was a little surprising. But the Jets need a backup. Wanted to get a younger backup that was that was so different from their last year. Whenever Darnold got hurt, they struggled starkly. So it's like that's definitely a good project pick. And yeah, Patriots. Patriots, although not terrible, not too exciting. Now, I did put in mentioning Kyle Duggar being a potential steal from a lower college. He was the he was the first D3 D3 player drafted in this entire draft. So I'll give myself a point on that one. Then we go on to the AFC North, where I'm giving it away, but Baltimore kind of just ran away with this draft. Baltimore, they got every pick right. They had Patrick Queen dropped to them whenever they've been trying to get a replacement linebacker for C.J. Mosley, especially after Terrell Suggs and Ray Lewis previously. That J.K. Dobbins is a good backup, is a good second string running back to Mark Ingram. They've been wanting to get another D tackle in the middle. Justin Matabuke is a good value one in the round 3. Devin Duvernay, they wanted another receiver outside of Hollywood Brown, and the list just keeps going on and on. They probably had the best pick, the best draft out of anyone. Then you have to go with the Bengals. You go with the Bengals where the fact that it's like they got Burrow. All 7 of their picks was on the first pick of the draft of the Browns, and that's only happened 3 times. All 3 times have been by the Bengals. Pick 1 of the first round, second round, third, fourth, all the way through the 7th. But really not that bad of a draft on them. They did kind of load up on linebackers with Keem Davis-Gaither, Logan Wilson, and Marcus Bailey. But Logan Wilson is considered a steal and one that was kind of a sleeper going into this draft. T. Higgins was one that could have been a fringe first-round pick as well. So, but the Bengals, they are now loaded at wide receivers, especially if A.J. Green gets healthy. With A.J. Green, Tyler Boyd, John Ross, and now T. Higgins, they could have a dynamic offense. The only problem with it is they really didn't address a lot of their offensive line issues. And yes, they did address it in free agency, but having some younger depth on it could have helped the case for Burrow. Then the Browns, they had the 10th overall pick. Some had Jedrick Wills as the top one or the second one. Good value on that. Delpit was a surprise pick for them. Maybe not so much for the fact that they pick LSU players, as they see with Delpit and Jacob Phillips, but more for the fact that he was down at a mid-second round pick. And then really outside of getting an offensive lineman to protect Mayfield, for the most part, nearly the entire portion of their draft was working on their defense, which with all the playmakers on offense, you kind of had to do that for them. Then the Steelers, they didn't really have that bad of a draft. It's just they didn't have much. Like they traded Minkah Fitzpatrick to get rid of their first round pick last year. They didn't grab a safety until late to really replace him. But really they grabbed the backup running back. That would be backup to James Conner. They grabbed a potential number 2 or number 3 receiver in Chase Claypool at Notre Dame, big body guy to back up DeAndre Johnson and what's his name? Smith-Schuster. And then Kevin Dodson's also a good value pick in the 4th round. Now going to the AFC South, we're also one of the definite studs in this draft being the Titans, for the fact that they grabbed Jacob Eason back in the 4th round, to where after this season they're gonna have some decisions to make, to where it's like you think that Phillip Rivers is gonna be only a 1-year starter for them. So they're going to have a choice between if they want to go with Jacoby Brissett, who has still on a lower contract, or if they want to try to build around Jacob Eason. And speaking of building around him, they got Michael Pittman, Jonathan Taylor, two very strong offensive weapons who were very prolific in college. Taylor's going to end up backing up Marlon Mack, and Michael Pittman will definitely be at least a number 2 or number 3 receiver behind T.Y. Hilton, maybe Paris Campbell. And really they didn't need, outside of that, Blackman's a good solid pick in the 3rd round, and Pinter really just kind of, well, the Colts were the one team that started their entire offensive line last year in every single game. Pinter's just going to end up giving them depth and making it to where they could end up having a potential loss in that offensive line and it not really affecting them. Then you have the Titans. The Titans did something a little surprising with getting Isaiah Wilson. You got a bunch of talk hearing Andrew Thomas, who was going to the Giants at number 4. But Isaiah Wilson on the other side of the line, their right tackle, still ended up being in the 1st round, but they ended up getting a steal in the late 2nd round with Christian Fulton, despite all of his kind of off-the-field, off-the-field issues. They grabbed a little scat back, kind of a receiving back, 5'8" Appalachian State, Darrington Evans, and a project quarterback with Cole McDonald out of Hawaii, where there's not too much you can, like, he put a bunch of stats, and that's what Hawaii quarterbacks really do. You're going to get them to really spread out the stat sheet because he'll get like the 4,000 yard receiving seasons. So that's kind of to be expected. Then going on to the most southern of the teams with Jacksonville, they kind of reached a little bit to get C.J. Henderson out of Florida to be the 2nd overall corner picked off the board, where most people had him in a mid-round pick, not as a top 10 pick, where you thought that if they could have gotten like Derek Brown to fall, they would have gone after him. They thought they may have gone after one of the the first wide receiver, but that didn't happen. So, but they were able to get good value, getting Caleb on Chassaw after 2 teams between the Cowboys and the Falcons really let him fall, especially with the fact that both of those previous teams needed pass rushers, as they either lost or both lost significant pass rushers from their offense. From their defense. Wow. But despite Jacksonville not being able to get a wide receiver in that 1st round, they did get Laviska Shenault out of Colorado. Wow, his name's not even that difficult. But he had different times where he was considered a mid-first round grade, fell all the way to mid-2nd round, still big body receiver, kind of do-it-all receiver. Just if he could end up staying healthy, he would be another consistent threat for Minshew Mania. And then the Texans with only 5 picks. They didn't do that bad of a draft, but they got Ross Blaylock at very good value, mid-round defensive tackle out of TCU. Jonathan Greer, the edge rusher, to hopefully work on the opposite side, J.J. Watt, and to potentially maybe replace Watt whenever he starts to slow down. But the rest of the picks don't really give you that much need. And yes, they only had 5 picks, but there's not really a wow factor on it. So, yeah, Colts had the best draft of the AFC South and potentially 2nd best draft overall. And then Texans are just kind of, we were here. And you have to question some of Bill O'Brien's decisions once again. Brandon Cooks is not going to replace DeAndre Hopkins by himself. Then going on to the West, we have Broncos surprisingly Broncos and the Raiders went after 3 receivers apiece. And the top line of it, Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler. It's a little surprising they went after both of them on their very first 2 picks. But Jeudy, highly considered the top wide receiver in the draft. even though Ruggs was picked first. Ruggs is a burner, so we can kind of compare both of these teams. Judy and Ruggs, they have their skill set. Judy's going to be the best route runner. Ruggs is going to be the biggest speedster. Hamler also going to be a speedster, just not to the same level as Ruggs, but Hamler is a bigger body receiver. The Broncos need an offensive line help, especially at center, getting Lloyd Cushenberry, and really getting help on both sides of the ball with McTelvin and Agim to help in the interior defensive line, and really kind of made it to where they were able to use their picks well. Then going to the Raiders off of it, they did pick 3 wide receivers also, but Brian Edwards, Henry Ruggs, Lynn Bowden, all SEC receivers, and all their picks were really from either high-profile teams, all SEC teams or other high-profile teams. Lynn Bowden, he was a Wildcat quarterback, running back. He was their do-it-all running back, so potentially another form of Randall Cobb. Brian Edwards pretty much broke every South Carolina receiving record that Deebo Samuel didn't break. And then the one questionable one on it was Damon Arnett, that he was picked as the 3rd best cornerback, but a lot of people had him as kind of a 3rd round grade. So that's really the only problem that the Raiders really have with their draft. Then going to the other side, Kansas City and Chargers. Kansas City doesn't really have much need, so it's like you could really count them to having the worst draft, but you don't have many picks. You get Clyde Edwards-Helaire to a dynamic receiving back to work with Damian Williams, who is more between the tackles back, and then getting Lucas Niang as a mid-value 3rd round pick to help boost the right side of the offensive line and could be a sleeper tackle. Then everything else is just working on defense because Mahomes really doesn't need much more help than he already has, as he's shown with his Super Bowl win. Then going to the Chargers, they kind of lost. They lost in this draft for the fact that if Tua was still there, if they had to choose between Tua and Herbert, they probably would pick Tua. And then you kind of just get stuck with Herbert with the kind of maybe Herbert's kind of a Josh Allen type. So it's like he has a lower floor, but he may have a higher ceiling than really either of the 2 quarterbacks picked ahead of him. But there is kind of a drastic shift for him. Then the Chargers really had to trade up back into the 1st round to get Kenneth Murray. They went 14 picks up to get him. So while Murray is the best true middle linebacker in the draft, they kind of had to give up a good bit to get him. They get Joshua Kelly to be a backup for, now since Melvin Gordon is gone, to back up Austin Eckler. And then the rest of the draft is kind of uneventful. So really, I like the Denver draft, and I wasn't really that much of a fan of the Raiders draft. Really, the Raiders and the Chargers had one really questionable pick where it's like, Arnett's kind of the one thing on the Raiders that's like, you could have picked this guy with that Lynn Bowden pick. But then the Chargers just gave up way too much to get Kenneth Murray, so you kind of have to fault them as well. But yeah, I say the Broncos probably have the best picks out of that AFC West portion of the draft. But that's the first half of the league. It's the first half of the league. Please wait for probably tomorrow. I'll let out the second part of this, going over the NFC. And then you actually get to see the true criticism of this draft. Because a lot of the AFC really went a lot better than expected. You really thought that a lot of these teams were going to end up having some sort of technology malfunction or something that was going to someone was going to end up going completely boneheaded with it. And really, Arnett's kind of the only one for the Raiders. But the Raiders did the same thing last year, and they really had the best draft out of anybody. Really, it's kind of the point where it's like you have to almost trust John Gruden and Mike Mayock because Mayock is a former draft expert. So just tell me what y'all think in the comments below. Please like, subscribe. Please share out to other people. Now, yeah, as I said, I'll go over the NFC picture tomorrow and go over a little bit of an SEC special, basically, especially the LSU portion of it, for the fact that they had tied the overall record for number of picks picked in the draft as 14. They tied Ohio State back in 06. Oh, they tied Miami back in 04, and they tied Ohio State in 06 for the most picks in the first 3 rounds with 10. I'll go over a few more statistics in another video, but yeah, please like, subscribe, share it out to other people, and if you want to see more of this, please put out a notification, that little bell that's on there, to where whenever I end up putting out more of these videos, you can end up seeing that right wherever they come out. But with all that being said, I'm the Contained Kunas. This is Stat7 Sports. Stay safe. See y'all next time. And holy crap, I'm linking way too damn much.